All right, I'm here to tell you a story. A few years ago, I got invited to my very first home concert. Waiting to be let in after pressing the buzzer, I could feel the anticipation. What was it going to be like to hear music in a stranger's living room? Was it going to be awkward? Too close, too much? Well, up the stairs I went. I was met at the door by the host, and a jumble of shoes on the floor told me that the polite thing to do was to take off mine. Once inside, all the seating in the living room had been turned towards one end of the room where a keyboard and a chair had been set up. The musician was hanging out in the living room with the rest of us, and at some point, she got up, made her way through all the people and the furniture to her spot behind the keyboard. People settled down. The music began, and there was this intent listening and just being present. There I was, cozy on a couch, surrounded by mostly strangers, 6 feet from a musician who suddenly forgot where she was in her song. There was this moment of intense quiet. She looked up. And then she laughed and threw up her hands in a "what do we do now" gesture. And we all laughed with her, and somebody in the room said, "Just make it up." At that moment, it became clear that we were all participating in the music making. And that music isn't just this thing that happens to us, but that music is a verb. It's an activity. It is something we do together. Now, I'd like to spend the next few minutes with you exploring how this idea of music as a verb challenges the idea that we as listeners simply just consume music as a thing. I'm a music researcher. I spent 10 years doing that, listening to music in all kinds of contexts. And I got particularly intrigued with the home concert as a space where I could investigate what Christopher Small, music ethnologist, calls musicking. That's the present participle of the verb to music. Musicking is a concept that involves not just the musicians, but also the audience. Small insists that listening is an activity. It's a process, and in this process, physical settings matter. Every space we enter sets up rules of conduct. The architecture and the cultural norms allow or restrict certain types of behavior. Every concert space and its rules tells us something about how we are asked to think about and listen to music. And this, in turn, says something important about who we are as human beings and as citizens of the world. All right, so it's Sunday night, and you are going to a classical concert. You arrive at the concert hall, you enter the grand lobby, you sip a glass of civilized wine with your friend. The bell rings, and you all file in an orderly fashion into the hall where you find your assigned seats. Once the music starts, your attention is on the performers. There are strict rules of conduct, right? No talking, no getting up and going to the bathroom. Try not to cough, and please do not clap between movements. The concert hall, with its sharp division between lobby and performance space, tells us that we can drink and socialize in one and only listen in the other. There's the sharp division between audience and performers. The ordered lines of seats keep us in row with our rapt attention turned towards the music. Music is, in this setting, sacred. Wednesday night, you go to a jazz gig. As you enter the dimly lit venue, you find a cozy spot among the cafe tables and chairs. Drink in hand, you chat with your friends and fellow jazzers. The musicians enter at some point in a somewhat orderly fashion, and they tear into a fast-paced bebop tune. The jazz club allows us to mix our drinking and our listening. However, the physical setting still tells us we should pay attention to the music. There's a dialogical principle at play here, so we can, please don't talk too loudly, but please clap after the solos. Because this dialogue is not just between the performers, it's also between performers and audience. Music, here, is dialectic. It's Saturday night and you really need to let your hair down, so you go to a rock concert. As you get into the venue, the wide open floor space and the multiple bars tell you that it is perfectly okay to drink and party while the music is going on. Actually, you're kind of supposed to. So, beer in hand, you negotiate other people's bodies, trying to get closer to the stage. Once the music starts, there's no room for conversation, only dancing, / jumping up and down in one place. And the performers are removed. They're elevated. The audience is this big mass. Music is ecstasy. This is a really busy concert week, just so you know. So, the following week, you get invited to a home concert. Now, what to expect? Well, the home, like any other space, have rules for conduct, although usually they are not for musicking. First of all, you enter not with a token of admission, a ticket, but with a key if it's your space, or a knock or a squeeze on the doorbell if it's someone else's. Entering is governed not by rules of purchase, but by rules of belonging and hospitality. Once inside, living rooms pretty much across the world present themselves with soft, low furnishings and personal knickknacks. We are culturally conditioned to perceive of this space as safe, as a haven. However, when a concert is about to take place in there, things get turned around. It messes with your expectations both of the concert and of the home. Suddenly, there's a stage-like setup in one end of the room, and strangers walk around in socks shaking hands. As a concert, it differs from the other formats by blurring, sometimes even eliminating, the boundaries between performers and audience. Music is communal. As a result, the situation and the space is simultaneously familiar and unfamiliar. You are both safe and slightly unsettled. The rule book of behavior suddenly have blank pages. And this opens up the conversation. You meet the stranger next to you. You have to take responsibility for the situation. And you become a co-creator of the concert moment along with everyone else in the room. Now, what can this moment say in a more general way about how we listen to music? Well, thinking of music as a verb forces us to shift the perspective. Rather than music being something that is sort of bestowed upon us, music is something you are constantly co-creating. Music, like theater and dance and literature, is a symbolic act. It is one that tries to make sense of the world that we live in. Music making is sense making. And every time you engage with and actively listen to music, you are entering into a conversation between your understanding of the world and that of someone else's. The musicians, the composers, the stranger next to you. If you are in a room full of strangers, all listening and musicking together, that conversation can become complex and multi-voiced. But in the world that we live in today, perhaps those complex and multi-voiced conversations are the most important ones that we can have as human beings, as citizens of the world. And they all start by you turning up, being present, tuning in. So my question to you is, are you ready to listen?